Hey there, friends. I have another video for you, another sort of slideshow demo. I got a couple comments on my walkthrough of the Maria Celia Tarot, and about how I did the reading at the end of it. That's one of my favorite spreads. And I know that large spreads can be sort of intimidating, so I thought I would actually unpack for you how I do work with large spreads, because they're actually pretty easy to do, and I find that I get a lot of information from them. So I'm going to use the same spread for two different questions, and I'm going to show you how I read the same cards to get two different answers for two different questions. And I'm just going to take it step by step how I go through. And you'll see in the first example, I go through pretty quickly, and I don't do a whole lot of deviation from the base. And then in the second example, I actually find a few additional things I can do to support my answer. So this is the first example we're going to do. And the question is, what's happening to my relationship with my son? He seems like he's slipping away. And the significators that were chosen were the Queen of Cups and the Knight of Cups. I'm sorry, the Queen of Swords and the Knight of Cups. And so the context is that this is a person whose son has graduated from college, and since he's been back home, he's been acting differently towards both his parents. So that's our context. That's all we know about the situation. And so we shuffled and we drew this array of cards. This is the Council of 13. This is the same spread I used in the Maria Celia video and the demo. And it's one of my favorites. I really like this spread. And it came to me initially through Camellia Elias's book, The Marseille Tarot. But I do think that this is a pretty common cartomantic spread. And essentially what you do is you start by laying out the central card, and then the one on each side, the one on above and below, and you continue to create this. And I have videos on this, but so let's unpack how I would read this to answer this question, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some themes in the cards, in the spread, to see, what's out there. And the first thing I notice is that there are lots of people cards in the reading, so that could be interesting. I put it in bold here. There are 5 coins cards, 2 swords cards, 1 cups, and 1 batons. There are 3 court cards and 3 trumps. 3 of the people face left, 3 of the people face right. Only the Fool is looking at anyone. There are 2 6 cards, and they're right next to each other. Neither of the significators that were chosen actually shows up in the spread, but that doesn't mean that the people I'm reading about don't, and we'll see that shortly. So really the only major themes that I see here are that there are lots of people cards and that there are 5 coins cards. And so, that could tell me that this is a pretty crowded situation, or that the theme of the reading overall will be money or responsibility. But I don't know enough about the reading yet for that to make sense yet. And in fact, one thing I found with the spread is that to a degree for both of the readings that I did, it doesn't really, it doesn't tell me much. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes the themes really do help, but in this case, they didn't tell me much. All right, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the first card in the reading, the first one that went down, and get a sense of what that tells me. And so we have the 6 of Wands. And so I have 6. Now my base keyword for 6 is beauty, and fire is passion. And, that's where I start. It's not where I end, though. That's just sort of the first sort of thing I click on when I see the 6 and the wands, is sort of fire and beauty. So this beautiful passion as my sort of impulse here. And so what I realized initially, what I assume, is that he's just probably excited about life. He's thinking about everything he's gained in college, and he's ready to go out and start, and he's feeling really good. He's feeling really passionate. He's feeling really excited about what life can do, right? So that gives me an overall sense of what will probably wind up being a main theme in the reading. And again, that is just an impulse I respond to. I saw the 6 and the wands, and I said, okay, beautiful passion. What is that? What does that suggest to me? What do I know about this guy? He's just graduated from college. He's really passionate. So he's ready to start his career. He's ready to get out there in the world. So that's how I arrived there. Now we get into sort of the reading proper, and I look at the three central cards, the horizontal central cards, and this is how we go through the reading, is really in terms of three, and that's why a large spread doesn't necessarily need to be intimidating, because you can just do what you're really doing is a series of related 3-card readings. And you do that if you're doing a 9-card box spread too. It's very similar. All right. So we start here with the 5 of Swords, and again the 6 of Wands and the 6 of Swords. Now the central card here, the 6 of Wands, is actually going to be the central card in all of the 3 readings. So as you'll see over time, it actually starts to make less of an impact, and I start to really read the cards in pairs. But everything is always tied to the context of this first idea of beautiful passion, of his excitement about the world, right? So here's what this 3 spread, again, 5 of Swords. 5s are conflict and disruption, and Swords are intellect and communication. We already know what the 6 of Wands is. I'm sorry, that should say the 6 of Swords. We have the 6 of Swords as the last one, is also beauty and intellect. And so what my thesis for the reading is, so these 3 cards kind of give me my beginning answers, what I'm really working with. It validates my initial thought about him being excited. So he's excited about everything he's learned, and he wants to get out there and start acting on what he knows. So he wants to put everything together. That 5 of Swords is really telling to me in this case, because 5s really shake things up. So it's possible that he really wants to hack through who he thought he was before. You know, he wants to kind of distance himself from his past. He wants to shake up his foundation. And the way that I get there is, if you think of 4 as stability, the 5 shakes that up, right? So he sort of wants to like say, screw you past, screw you who I used to be. I'm ready to like get out there and do the things I'm excited about. And that, you know, it's what people that age do. And actually his enthusiasm seems really, really promising. So he's probably outgrown his past a little bit, his childhood. He's probably resisting that, and that actually comes up as a theme later too. All right, so we read those 3 cards together, and we get a sense of the overall thesis of the reading. Now, everything else I'm going to do is in response to that. In essence, I'm going to try to validate that that's true, or learn more information about why that's true. So the next thing I do is I read the 3 cards in the middle as a column. So here we have the Fool, the 6 of Wands, the 3 of Cups. And the 3 of Cups is 3, which is growth or expansion or birth, plus water, which is feeling. And again, we're still tied to that middle 6, right? That 6 of Wands. So what this tells me, after considering the combination of these cards, is he's essentially fallen in love with this new path. And he doesn't necessarily know where he's going. He doesn't know what that path is, but he's excited about it. I put here, you know, that in the absence of a significator, this is the first person we've read so far. And so in essence, this is him, you know, and this represents the subject of the reading. And he's like, I'm ready to go out there. I'm ready to like break out into the world. Feeling really excited. I'm feeling really good. I feel like I've really grown. That 3 of Cups rather. Now my querent probably views him as foolish, but he thinks he's innocent and untainted, and he's just in love with himself, and he's in love with possibility, and he's out there in the world. All right, so that keeps validating what I already have decided about this guy, right, and about this reading. So now what we're going to do is we're going to read the next combo of 3, which is this outer row here. And so we have the Papist, the 6 of Wands again, and the Page of Cups. And so the beginning of this line is the Papist, and so I say, you know, there's a lot of secrets being kept from people here. So it sounds like he's keeping some secrets, but he's actually looking back at his past. He's looking back at life. And he's looking back at that stuff fondly. You know, he's innocent, so he's not being malicious about things. He's just remembering, you know, and being young, and he's focused on what he loves. On the other hand, my querent's also technically keeping secrets too, because they're not telling him how they feel. They're just coming to me to find out what's going on. And they're sort of like approaching this whole thing from a place of power, right? A place of position. You know, I'm your parent, and I demand to know what's going on inside you. But this is now a grown adult. So their own sort of secrecy about the situation, their own handling of him, is probably creating an additional layer of conflict for both. So this is the first time the parents come into the reading. And what it tells me is that they're not being fully honest with him either. So now we read the outer column, which are these three cards, and we have the 10 of coins, which is 10 is completion, and earth is daily life or responsibilities. And then the foundation card there is the 2 of coins, which is attraction or polarity in earth. Now, the interesting thing about this is that we switch, in essence, to a new theme in the reading. He's finished one cycle and he's starting another. The 2 of coins suggests he may be a little irresponsible or a little, innocent or youthful in his approach. But he is at the end of a cycle and he's starting out on a new one, and that makes total sense. Now you can see here a couple things. One is that I did not really address polarity or attraction with the 2 of coins, right? Because in this case it doesn't really connect. But what does connect is the newness of the number, right? It's so early in the suit that it does suggest sort of an innocence or an inexperience. And that makes sense, too. At the end of a cycle, right, you're starting again. You are going to be sort of new and inexperienced. And there are a couple of pages in this reading that suggest that, too. So, when I started this, I said, that's the keywords. The things are where I start, but that's not where I end. And what I meant by that is like that's what starts the juices flowing. But I don't stay rigid. I don't stay like forcing myself to say, okay, this has to be connected to polarity. It doesn't have to be. There are many, many ways that the cards interact. But what I start with is the foundation of my understanding of the cards, and that's what I got. But just looking at them. Looking at that 10 and that 2, I'm like, he's finished with one cycle and he's starting out on another. But he may be a little juvenile about it. Although this row actually tells me that's, despite the fact that he's young, he actually has a fair amount of willpower. So here we have the Page of Coins, again, the 6 of Wands, and Force. And so what this tells me, that strength card, that force card's really key. So despite the fact that he's youthful and inexperienced, despite the fact that he's really just generally enthusiastic and he's marveling at the world, he's actually pretty strong-willed and responsible. He's the Page of Coins as well as the Page of Cups. So he has the ability to be, willful and responsible. He just needs to learn how. He needs some practical experience going out there in the world. And actually remembering that the 6 of Wands is right there in the middle, he's probably really excited about learning those lessons too. So, so far I don't see anything to worry about this kid in the reading. So then we read the second diagonal, and here we have the King of Coins, the 6 of Wands again, and the 4 of Coins. Now, the 4 of Coins again is stability and earth, so like stable finances, stable responsibility. He's got a strong foundation to build on. He's had good mentors. That King of Coins up there is sort of our sign that he's got good he's been taught well. He's got good people to look up to. He's got a strong foundation to build on. So overall, now I just sort of take all those 3 card readings and I put them together. And it's just a matter of summarizing what I've learned, and essentially he's just doing what young people do at that point in their lives. He's excited, he's focused on that stuff. As a parent, as a concerned adult, we may be viewing what he's doing as irresponsible, but he's not super irresponsible. He's just young, and as long as he's building on the foundation that they've set for him, he should be okay. They just need to keep in mind that from their position, they need to look at him in the same way they want him to look at them. They need to sort of turn around from that place of privilege, from that papist space, and really, really look at him too and see who he really is. And hopefully this reading can do that. So now we're going to look at the exact same spread, but we're going to look at a completely different question. And the question here is that this person is falling in love with their married boss, and she thinks he feels it too. So what happens if she tells him how she feels? So the current significator was the Queen of Cups, and the boss's significator is the King of Cups. Now, as I'm saying this, I'm realizing I refer to the King of Coins later on as the King of Cups, but we'll just ignore that. So what we need to know is they've been working together for 5 or 6 years, but never very closely. Over the last 6 months, they've had to work together more closely. The themes that I would notice are really the same that I noticed last time. Nothing really leaps out at me. The number of people in the reading might suggest that this is a busy office or that there's a lot of potential for gossip, which is not something I picked up on the first time. But so let's see how we start. So we start again by the steps are the same. So we start with the central card. And the reason I wanted to do 2 different questions for the same spread is so that I could sort of explore how, I start with the foundation of the keywords and the combination of, numerology and element, but context changes everything. So now here we have beauty and passion again. And here the image of the card is really calling out to me. There's like an eruption, like a firework of passion. And probably it feels really hot, There's always a question in my mind when this comes up in relationship to readings. Is there vanity at work? 6 is beauty, but another side of beauty is vanity. The other thing that I can say here is that this isn't cups, it's wands. And so this seems to be more about lust than it is about love. Passion over feeling, in essence. So, a lot of times when people say they're falling in love with somebody, what they really mean is they just want to fuck that person's brains out, and they become really attracted to them. Love is very different than that. And so, I put a question mark there. Is there vanity at work? That's something I would ask myself, not the client. But, and I wouldn't even necessarily say this seems like lust to me yet. I'm going to hold that back because it may be something I'll need. So again, I come back to the central 3 cards, and I get the same 3, the 5 of Swords, the 6 of Wands, and the 6 of Swords. And so what this tells me, and you can see how different it is from when I was reading about the sun. So this has shaken up her view. She's really thinking differently, and she really is enjoying this. Like, she's probably fantasizing a lot. She's the 6 of Wands. I'm sorry, the 6 of Swords. Beautiful thought to me can quickly become fantasy. So she's probably doing a lot of fantasizing about the situation, and it's really shaking her up. But she's enjoying it. She's really, she's getting off on it, so to speak. But the other thing to look at is that all of these are weapons, right? So there's something in there that makes me go, is there danger at play here? And those swords look like cages. So I wonder if she's sort of wandering into a trap. Again, I may not say that yet, but this is something in here that I'm going to hold on to. This could be a dangerous situation. What I would say to her is that it seems like this has really shaken up her thinking. She's probably doing a lot of fantasizing. It probably feels really good. But I'm holding in overall this sense of like danger, Will Robinson, right? So now I look at my next 3. Again, the Fool, the 6, and the 3 of Cups. And here the Fool really tells me a lot. And in the reading about the sun, the Fool was pretty positive overall, but here I don't see it that way. I see impulsiveness without thinking about consequences. The emotion that's growing in her, and now we can see it's not just lust, there is some emotion, but it's nascent, it's just coming to be. It can cause her to be really impulsive and to act without thought for consequences. And I'm going to explore that theme later on. So that's something really important. So I'm already getting the sense that telling her boss about this is not a good idea, but we're going to keep going. So we read the outer row. We have the Papist, the 6 of Wands, and the Page of Cups. So here I said the boss's feelings are really a mystery, because the Papist or the Pope or the High Priestess, however you want to talk about her, to me is always about unknown. It's about withholding. It's about secrets. That's my sense of it, and so the situation really is a mystery. We don't really know what he feels, and she's focused on her own feelings. If you look at the way the Page of Cups is looking at that cup, that's what she cares about most, her own feelings. There's sort of an innocence there, but it's not maturity, and the Papist isn't telling anyone what she feels, and that's going to come into play later on too as we start exploring the boss and where he is. So again, her impressions of the boss's feelings may or may not be accurate, but they're definitely withheld. Now we look at the middle column, and this was the place where things started getting tricky for me. This is, again, if you remember the first reading, this is where a theme changed into the kid's sense of responsibility. Now we're looking at something else, a different context, and so it's not about responsibility. And what I realized that this combination meant was that she's worked really hard to get where she's gotten with that 10 of coins, but she's risking it by resting it on this sort of seesaw down here on the 2 of coins. So the polarity issue isn't really at play here either. This is really about balance. She's resting everything she's achieved on something really unstable. If you just look at the image of the 2 of coins and the way that could just tip over at any point, and it could tip in either direction. So again, there are real life consequences at play, not just emotional ones. So this could affect her job. So now we read the diagonals, and we've got the page of coins, the 6 of wands, and force, another page. And again, neither of the significators we chose appeared in this reading, and so I look for other signs. I look for other significators. There are times, and there are people who will say that to make it easy, you should always say the significator is only the querent, and every other court card is someone else. And there are times where I do that, but in these readings that I didn't need that, and it didn't make sense to me to do that. These were definitely representations of different parts of herself as well as other people. But so we have another page here, like the page of cups, but we have the page of coins, and then we have strength and will. Notice that the page is turning away, and force is turning away from that 6 of wands. They're both looking away from it. So there's a practical willpower, maybe her intentions are innocent, like the page, but she really needs to conquer that innocence, and she needs to be practical. If she has to choose between being the page of coins and the page of cups, be the page of coins. If you're going to be innocent, then be practically innocent and use that willpower. So again, things are not looking good for telling the boss about this. And now that boss comes into play, here's where I actually refer to the King of Cups rather than the King of Coins. But what I meant was the King of Coins. How can that not be her boss, right? He's holding the paycheck. He's holding the money. So he's the object of her affections here in this reading. How can that not be? He's the only king in the spread. He himself is enthusiastic about his stability. So we have the 6 of swords, 6 of wands, as enthusiasm, a passionate enthusiasm, but his focus is on the 4 of coins, which is stability, financial security, even being sort of a fuddy-duddy or a stick in the mud. So she views him as kind of a romantic figure, but he's much more practical than that. So he likely would not really be in a position to reciprocate what she feels. So here's where some other things came into play that really weren't interesting in the kids' reading, but that are interesting for me here. So the first thing is to look at this row here with the Fool and the King of Cups. Now the Fool is looking towards the King of Cups, and I'm doing it already. The King, I don't know why I decided it was the King of Cups, but the King of Coins. The Fool is like racing right, only to that. But the King of Coins is looking towards his own future. He's not looking back. He's not paying any attention. She's lurching toward him, but he's thinking about his own future. Now, the Page of Cups, on the other hand, he walks away from them both, and he's focusing on being practical. So there is a choice here. And this just reconfirms my sense that the boss is probably not really interested, and if he is, he's not going to let that impact his life. The other thing I noticed too is that the Page of Cups is so distracted by looking at the cups that he's not even paying attention. So he's walking into this bramble, into all these thorns. Look how sharp all of that is. And it culminates in the unknown again. So the Papist doesn't tell people shit she doesn't have to, I wrote here. But, the Page of Cups isn't looking where he's going. He's just wandering into the forest, into the unknown, and not really thinking about what's on the other side. The King's row, the King's column, is pretty stable. He's got a lot of willpower. His thoughts are balanced and clear. We saw in the diagonal that he's not really a romantic figure, and here this sort of validates that for me. He's gonna make smart choices. That's what he does. That's how he got where he is. And he has a lot of willpower. So again, even if there is attraction, he's not going to let that get in the way. And then the Page of Coins column is interesting too. The Page of Coins in this reading seems like the best we can hope for her. And he's resting on the Five of Swords and the Four of Cups, and that just says to me, with the Five of Swords disrupting thought, it's like you got to rethink this, and you got to be secure. And so this is not a really good time to take major risks. So to sum it all up, this is not a good time. What happens, and I have to tie it into the question, what happens if she tells him? It's not going to work out. It's likely that even if your boss has feelings for you, he's going to do what he thinks is responsible. And if there are any consequences for what happens, he's going to avoid them. So any consequences that occur are going to end up affecting you and not him. So you should probably consider all of that before you take any major risks. And taking a major risk is probably not advised. So that's it. So now, as I always say, you have different life experience, you have different associations. So if you were to do this, you'd come up with different information, you'd come up with different solutions, right? You'd probably come up with different answers. But this is just my way to unpack and sort of show you how I work through these readings and how I read the way I do. It's just really about making associations and connecting those associations to the situation, and then sort of building up a series of answers that culminate in the final answer. And this last step is almost the most important one. It is the most important one, and it's where a lot of readers kind of fall down because they forget to do that. So they'll read all the positions in a spread, whether it's something like this or it's a more traditional spread where the cards have positions that mean something. They forget to, once they do that, to sum it all up and tie it into an answer. So that's what you got to do. After you go through all these cards, you have to take all that research you did and prove your thesis. And that's how you answer the question, and make sure that the answer actually answers the question that they asked. So, as always, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll talk soon.